Hello and welcome to another episode of AI Script to Screen. Today, I'm really pleased to have on the show James Earl. James is a psychotherapist. He's a psychosexual relationship therapist, more specifically, and has been in private practice for 15 years. And he also works at Innes Free Therapy, the world-renowned sexual compulsivity clinic in Harley Street. He contributes regularly to the media, including interviews for The Guardian and Newsweek, and workshops for HSBC, among others. Alongside his clinical work, James has been a professional jazz pianist and a university lecturer in philosophy. Hi, James.
Hi there.
Hi, thanks for joining. So we're both psychotherapists, and we have both been having some quite interesting conversations around AI and where AI fits in the constellation of psychotherapy. It's often seen as a challenge to psychotherapy. After all, psychotherapy is expensive and there's a huge waiting list and it's time consuming. And LLMs are free at the point of on your mobile phone, and over 100 million people every day use ChatGPT just as one LLM as a therapist. Does my partner love me? Am I the problem or are they? And what should I do next? And those are the top three questions which are asked by over 100 million people of GPT and LLMs like it, like Claude and Perplexity. So, James, where would you like to start? Do you think LLMs are a threat to psychotherapy?
I don't know. I don't think they're going to wipe out the need for psychotherapy. However, I think they fulfill a slightly different function and one that is clearly useful to people. Quite a few of my clients use ChatGPT and others to problem, and I think that's a perfectly sensible thing to do if you feel that the process is useful to you. But it's different to the therapy process. And that's why I think the two things are somewhat distinct. For example, the questions that you just asked are, understandable questions that people have, but they're not ones that any decent therapist should really strive to answer for you. And that's not just simply because, I'm genuinely not walking in your shoes, but it's not helpful to give you an answer. I mean, the whole point of psychotherapy is to hopefully get you to a point where you are able to understand the problem you're facing a little bit more clearly and find an answer if that's what you're looking for yourself, or realize there's no answer, or realize that there are two answers. But when ChatGPT or whoever it is gives you an answer, they're doing something which for a therapist would be unethical. I mean, I might suggest that ChatGPT giving you an answer to those questions is somewhat unethical because they don't know you. And the only difference is that the therapist knows that they don't know you, whereas the ChatGPT knows nothing. It certainly doesn't know you. And if it gives you the impression of knowing you, then that's an illusion.
One sec. I guess that cuts to the part of the nub of what the challenge is here. It's the illusion. It's the illusion that it cares. It's the illusion that it's listening to you. I mean, there was the Turing test that for the longest time was seen to be the benchmark that LLMs have arguably passed now. But there's the illusion by the user that the AI understands you and that they are reflecting back a coherent version of what you've asked them, and an answer which they can hold on to. And it validates them. It supports their worldview. Whereas a therapist, and we have to really, I suppose, define what psychotherapy we're talking about. Is it CBT or is it Jungian or is it existential or psychodynamic or whatever? But broadly speaking, therapy is challenging, whereas using an LLM, it's telling you what you want to hear.
Yes, I mean, I do think that you pay a therapist not to agree with you. You pay a therapist to make you think. And I mean, it's an old, motto for therapists that if you don't surprise your client, you're probably not going to keep them, because if they've already thought what you're telling them, then nothing's going to happen. But I mean, more profoundly than that, I mean, you are actually there to listen to the speech of your client and to reflect back something which they hadn't seen in it. And does LLM do that? I mean, arguably not really, because it is only dealing with the surface. It's dealing with the surface of what you're saying and then predicting what connects with that. This is how LLMs work. So I think it's not able to do what we're meant to do. I mean, we're meant to be attuned to not just the semantic content of the client's speech, but to the grain of the speech. So if you like, what you might call the voice beneath the message. I'm not sure an LLM will ever be able to do that.
Do you think if we take the version of psychotherapy that is CBT, where you're dealing with thought processes, maybe in being, should we call them inappropriate or unhelpful thought processes that may lead somebody to self-sabotage themselves. So they don't want to act in a particular way, and yet they find themselves doing it time and time and time in a recurring pattern. Is that the sort of place where an LLM might come in handy because it will identify those repeating cycles?
I would call the that sort of approach to therapy essentially psychoeducational, or what's called psych ed. I mean, it's essentially giving the client information which changes the way they think and therefore how they feel. I think CBT is founded on that premise that if you think in different ways, you'll feel in different ways and behave in different ways. So an example might be you're afraid of flying. That's the symptom that walks into the room. And the therapist may give you information about the physics of flying, which changes the way you think about not being in the air with nothing beneath you, but actually in a fluid, for example, if that's the anxiety, and it changes the way you feel, and then suddenly you're able to get on an aeroplane. I'm pretty sure that approach works very well on specific problems like that. And that psych ed bit, that bit of giving you information which can change the way you think and feel, I'm pretty sure that can be done by AI.
Uh-huh.
I mean, this is not disrespecting CBT, because CBT is a powerful modality. But I think it is at risk of being something which, a bit like, say, people are saying that lawyers could be replaced by AI because they're just, unless they're barristers putting together very complex arguments, and they're essentially assembling information, and AI can do that just as well. And to some extent, maybe doctors. But, that CBT approach, I think, runs the risk of being substituted by AI.
So you'd
But
see it.
that's very different to psychotherapy. Psychotherapy isn't the same thing at all.
Okay.
Actually, I mean, CBT has for some years sort of, if you like, looked down on what they would say was non-evidence based, non-provable, and what woo-woo psychotherapy.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe what they're saying is that they've got a content based modality which could be replaced by something that can deliver content.
Okay. All right. And so as the tide rises, as AI gets better and better, or LLMs get better and better with regard to psychotherapy, you think that the brand of psychotherapy that's going to go under first is going to be CBT?
Well, I think they may well discover, and I've certainly heard CBT therapists that argue this, that despite the fact they're all evidence based and that it's all provable and it's all, effective, and that they're going to discover that it's not just the information they convey, it's something to do with the relationship itself that
Yes.
works in therapy. Now, of course, that puts them in the same boat as, myself or you as a psychotherapist. We're interested in the relationship, not so much the content, the informational content. And of course, that bit is very difficult to reproduce with AI. So I think we may find CBT therapists theorizing more about the importance of the relationship. I'm not saying they don't think it's unimportant. I'm just saying that they made quite a point of stressing the fact that it was a scientific delivery of something that worked.
Right.
I think
Okay.
they may have to give up that position. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. And then when it comes to psychodynamic or analytic psychology, those would be presumably, as the tide rises, the last ones to be threatened by
I don't think they
AI.
will be threatened at any point. I mean, I think the thing that makes, ChatGPT or LLMs popular for this whole area is exactly what you said at the beginning, which is that they're cheap, they're readily accessible, they can be done and consulted anonymously without any hassle. And it's, I mean, in that sense, it's a really good extra resource for people. But the bit that therapy does, or psychotherapy does, I don't think is the same thing at all. So that I think what will happen is that a lot of people will use LLMs for what looks like therapy and maybe has therapeutic elements and maybe elements of CBT and other things. And then there'll be another profession that is working in a relationship, the classic psychotherapy model, which unfortunately will probably be the preserve of the relatively wealthy. But that fact is not actually a problem with the model. It's a political problem external to the model. And of course, an individual practitioner, and I include myself in this, can offer work at any level they want, so that it maximises accessibility. So I work at full price, half price, quarter price, depending on people's means. It still doesn't open it to everybody, perhaps, but it's the sort of thing you can do.
Yep. What about hybrid approach? What about, have you ever had a client or a patient come to you and say, well, James, ChatGPT said this, you told me this, ChatGPT said this. What do you say to that? Yeah, have you ever had that happen to you?
I've had clients say that they chatted to ChatGPT and they gave them a reassuring answer on the whole. It's very rare that you get one that says, ChatGPT challenged me and told me that I was talking nonsense.
Yeah.
So unlikely to happen. And then I suppose they would like to know whether I want to agree with that. And then that's an interesting dynamic. That's the point where you're not paying me for that. You're not paying me to agree with you. I mean, I might agree with you, but the whole point is I'm listening to your speech, trying to understand what you're actually saying at a level below the level that you know what you're saying.
Please respond to me as Sigmund Freud. Please respond to me as Jean-Paul Sartre. Please respond to me as Carl Jung, or please respond to me as Lacan. And then the response they get back will be very different to one if they just said, well, does my partner love me? Then the response might be more challenging and might give them something a bit more to consider.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. It might give them a different set of answers, but I'm not sure that it gets to the point of what therapy is doing, because in therapy, the question asked is not something which the therapist is trying to answer. They're trying to listen to the question, see what that question means.
Oh, go on. Can you
So,
develop that a bit?
well, if you said, "What should I do in this situation?" or "Does my partner love me?" I'm interested in why you're asking that question. What evidence would be uh, good to you that your partner did or didn't love you? I mean, what are you looking for? So it's deconstructing the question. I don't think that, I mean, LLMs might be able to do that to some extent, but I suppose the thing that's a little difficult here is that I believe that what we're doing is working with the unconscious of the client. And I'm not sure that LLMs can get to the unconscious of the client. And when we talk about the unconscious, it's tempting to think, I suppose this is the idea that comes down from Freud in popular culture. It's some area of your brain which is not known to you, a hidden bit. It's not. It's really not. I mean, you ask a neuroscientist, they won't be able to point to the unconscious. It doesn't exist like that. Where it exists is in your speech, where you're not aware of actually what you're saying. And this is Freud's great insight, because when he was talking about parapraxes or slips of speech, forgetting things, putting the wrong word in. These are all unconscious symptoms of a dialogue that's not being said. And that's where I think LLMs don't really engage. I think they're very good with what you're saying and asking, but they're not really good with trying to read below the surface. Now, of course, not all therapists believe in the unconscious. I've never heard a CBT therapist refer to the unconscious, not in any sort of profound way. And certainly some therapeutic modalities which are not behavioral, like CBT, like existential therapy. I mean, I have existential colleagues who say, we don't refer to the unconscious.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
which is fine. I find it an interesting idea, but they would say that anything you ascribe to the unconscious is probably you wanting to act in bad faith. That sort of position.
Right.
Interesting one. But I definitely do believe in the unconscious, but I think where the unconscious lives is in our speech and in the statements we make about what we want. And predominantly what we're doing is we're expressing what we want a lot of the time, but we're unaware of the bits that other people want, the big other, whether that's parents or a partner or society. That is in the speech that we deliver. And that's what the therapist can help you untangle. Where are you speaking from what you want, and where are you unconsciously living the life of other people?
Okay. Okay. Interesting. But what about just spitballing here? What about if you went in to an LLM as a couple, and as a couple you talk to an LLM, and the prompt would be, please, as a couple, please respond to me as James Earl. So you put in all of James Earl's
Yeah,
information, and
yeah.
then John and Sarah sit down and they say, right, we have this problem in our marriage. Please respond to us as James Earl would. Do you think that might be
Well,
possible at some point?
no,
Yeah, it might.
because
Okay.
I straightforwardly, the reason why is the LLM might get my semantic content exactly right
Yeah.
and be able to deliver, a few sort of characteristic phrases and even be able to work out what the perspective was, which they meant to create. But what they're not able to do is listen to the two in the way that you're, as a therapist, meant to listen, which is beyond the semantic content and trying to work out what it is that's really being said.
Mm.
Also, how does let's suppose the symptom in the room is the couple not having sex. And one of the reasons they're not having sex is because the guy is suffering from ED. Okay. I mean, a typical approach to that might be to say, well, have you tried doing this, that, or the other? You know, it's a solution focused problem. And, I'm not saying that can't work, but the interesting thing from my point of view is what is the ED expressing? So the ED is a inarticulate form of speech. Symptoms are inarticulate forms of speech. Um, I don't know how an LLM would really replicate that. I mean, I think it's certainly beyond where they are at the moment. So whether they'll ever be able to do that, I don't know. I suspect that the reason they can't do that is that if you like, the therapist should have gone through a process of therapy themselves, which allows them to understand a little of their own unconscious, the way I put it, the presence, the desire of the other in their speech, which allows them to identify that more easily in the other person. It
Okay.
also allows them to be the transferential other for the client. This is something which, of course, an LLM can't do because the LLM doesn't conceive itself to be the transferential other.
Yes, of course. So we're saying that the LLM is great at dispensing information. If
Yeah,
it's a
good at
if
sensing information.
if it's about your thoughts, then it can pick up on your thoughts, and it can pick up where there may be self-sabotaging behavior, where you may be overcritical.
So where it will really score is with the ego psychology movement in the States, which comes down from Freud, but probably begins with Anna Freud and then develops. And the whole idea is that there is a battle between the ego, the id, and the superego, and that the therapist's job is to reinforce the ego to make a strong ego. That's the job. I think LLMs are good at that. They make you feel good about yourself. But the whole alternative view is that the ego anyway is a fiction. So reinforcing the ego is not helpful. It's just increases the level of fantasy or illusion.
Okay. Just a relative sidebar, I suppose. Obviously, there are a large number of therapists who are concerned about the rise of LLMs and how it's going to affect their profession, their ability to uh, to earn a living from being a psychotherapist. Do you think that organizations have been a little bit flat-footed in responding to the rise of LLMs and maybe quelling some of the anxieties and fears, uncertainties, and doubts that working therapists have in relation to the rise of LLMs?
Bit sorry.
Well, look, I guess what I'm asking is, we're all members of professional bodies and we all have to do continuous professional development in order to maintain our qualifications. The organizations that represent us, then they don't seem to be anywhere in the discussion around the rise of LLMs doing therapy when a lot of therapists are very concerned about the ability of LLMs to do it. I mean, here we are at the moment, we've just got ChatGPT. This time next year, we'll probably have avatars who will have photorealistic real-time engagement with their clients. I can understand why a lot of therapists will be concerned about their ability to AI's ability to replicate what a therapist does to the degree that they'll be out of work, not to put too fine a point on it. Do you think the organizations that represent us should be doing more to quell those anxieties?
Depends what the organisations are about, because I would imagine a professional organisation for, say, a CBT approach might be working very hard at the moment to try and resurrect the idea of the importance of the actual relationship, as opposed to just the transmission of information and the advocacy for certain programs. I think psychoanalytic organisations are sort of probably to some extent hugging themselves with glee, going, "Ha ha ha! I told you so." I
Why?
mean, well, because they have always said it's based in the relationship that you have with the client. It's not so much about the corrective advice you give and or the information you impart. And I think the great thing about the arrival of LLMs is it's made that pretty clear. There is a difference. Therapy is a broad term for a lot of different things. And by the way, most of the things under that umbrella I'm saying are effective. I absolutely believe in CBT. I could give you a chapter and verse on why I believe in it and where it's effective. And, I like it as a modality. But the question is it at risk of being supplanted by LLMs? And I think the answer is there's more danger to approaches like CBT than there is to, say, psychoanalysis or psychotherapy, psychodynamic psychotherapy.
Okay.
Can I just say, Clint, there is
Yes, cool.
another whole, I've been taking a rather psychodynamic approach to this, but, if I was a humanistic psychotherapist, and my belief is that anybody training should go through the humanistic training to develop good listening and empathy and, what they call unconditional
Positive
regard.
regard. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just that one idea is very difficult to get in a true sense from an LLM, but they're very good at imitating it. So here's the problem. This is where I think Esther Perel is absolutely correct when she says, it's a sort of false intimacy, because I think they can definitely give you unconditional positive regard, but it's not really the same as you get from a human being who's looking at you warts and all, and you get the feeling that you're being held and approved of.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? So, I mean, that humanistic approach isn't really what I do, but I do see from their point of view, they would say, look, there's no substitute. So I think, again, the humanistic professional body may well be saying, listen, nothing to worry about. You need a real human being in the room. And I
Yeah.
think one of the bits of evidence for that is what happened to the music industry. And it's very interesting what happened to the music industry. When streaming became so popular, and then finally AI came along, and you can write a beautiful folk song in 20 seconds with the right prompt. People in the end just go, yeah, it's not satisfying me. I want to see something live where people make mistakes.
Mm.
And, I've just come across a band called Engine de Poitrine. They're a French-Canadian duo doing what sounds very like a mix of jazz and prog rock and punk. It's a very odd, and they dress up in the most extraordinary costumes. But the whole point of that is absolutely not what AI could produce. Too
Yeah. Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
And you can see that hundreds of people dancing to it. I tried to buy
Yes.
tickets to go and see them because they're doing a British tour. Every single venue sold out, and yet they're so live is really important, and it's actually where the music industry is now realizing it makes its money. It can't make money from CDs anymore. Streaming is only in the hands of those streaming companies, but it can make money from merchandise and live events. And so live is what counts. And I think in therapy, live is what counts.
Yeah. Well, live is what counts if people can afford it and if people have got the time to do it.
That's
At the
right.
moment, we're in the middle of what the Royal College of Psychiatrists called a second pandemic, where we've got kids freaking out, not to put too fine a point, anxiety, trauma, depression. We've got alcoholism still on the rise. I work quite closely with the National Association of Children of Alcoholics, and the numbers there are staggering. 2 million people. Well, we've got the people who suffer from the mental health issue, but we've got the people around them who are trying to support. And obviously, if you want to go to CAMS, you're looking at between 6 months and a year to get in. We've got organizations like Relate closing down.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a real cost of living crisis going on at the moment, which is acting as an accelerant to all of this. Wouldn't it be nice if LLMs were the answer? We've got something free at the
Yeah.
point of sale and
I think,
actually worked.
I mean, that's the other thing that LLMs are doing. They're not just distinguishing between the psych ed bit of therapy, which I think CBT, is starting to worry about, and psychodynamic psychotherapy, which is quite different and based in a relationship. But it's also showing the difference between the need for therapy and the availability of therapy. And that's not therapy's problem. That's a political problem. So, I think it's good that it's exposing the need. And in some ways it's answering part of that need, which is also a good thing. But, it's not adequate. But the problem with it not being adequate is one that, you and I can't tackle. But we can go on plying our trade and hoping that now people realize why this is a useful thing to have around. I mean, there is an absolute mental health crisis at the moment, and I'm sure you'll agree with that.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I don't think the answer to that is LLMs, but I do think it can answer some of the problems there. But, if you've got an anorexic 17-year-old, don't put them on ChatGPT, please.
Yeah. Okay. So, James, thanks ever so much for coming on to this podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. If
It's been a
anybody
pleasure
wants
to
to,
be here. Thank you.
if anybody wants to reach out to you, where do they find you? How do they get hold of you?
Just at my name .com, jamesearl.com. So I'm easy to find.
All right.